Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hi, everyone. Sorry for the lack of chairs. There's another event going on, and we brought out what we could. So by all means, please, and I'd ask any folks that maybe can give their chairs up to folks that might have a little more difficulty in standing the entire time. We would appreciate that very much. My name is Vince Delisio. I am I serve a couple of roles in this town. My most important role is as resident, but I'm a council member here in town. I'm also president of the Cave Creek Museum. The museum's not moving. You guys have been reading all that and been beating us up for that. Thank you very much. So we're here today to honor a man, a pioneer, and we've got some brief commentary from a couple of folks that are also here to honor him, and so what I'd like to do is start off just by introducing the mayor of Carefree, Mr. Les Peterson. Mayor Peterson.
Thank you, Vince, and thank you to Gerry Jones and his lovely wife. It is a pleasure to be able to, over the years, meet in person and to dedicate the plaza, which had been known as the Sundial Plaza, is now the Gerry Jones Sundial Plaza, which we're all in right now. But I mean, when I was a kid, long time ago, I used to come up here. 1958, my family came to the area, and it was open desert. It was beautiful open desert. Oh, I'll talk. Can you now? How about now? Okay. I won't start over though. 1958, moved here, would come up. It was a gorgeous, beautiful desert. Blank. There was nothing up here. Scottsdale Road came up. It was gravel north of Camelback. And this was developed by people with foresight and dedication into what it is today. And you look around the beautiful downtown area, Hampton Inn going in, etc. And this gentleman was one of the people who had the foresight and the dedication to make it come to being. So I want to extend a thank you on the part of the town, on the part of all the residents, literally throughout the foothills, for people of this caliber, people of this talent, and what they have given to our town. So thank you, Gerry Jones, and it's a great honor to dedicate the Sundial Plaza to become the Gerry Jones Sundial Plaza, and we put a plaque in right now also, and I'll turn this back over to Vince. Thank you, Gerry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ooh. See, that's why the mic stand was so far down. Now it's got to come back down for people like me. Vertically challenged, Mr. Jones. All right. There we go. That's a little better. Okay, so everyone has a Gerry Jones story, why they're here, how they came to meet this guy. Even if you've never directly met him, you somehow have heard a myth, a legend. And my Gerry Jones story was about 5 years ago. And there have been a couple of stories, and I'll make them very, very brief, but I feel it's important to share them with you. So I grew up in Phoenix. I grew up in Central Phoenix, and my wife and I, when we started dating almost, was it, Cheryl, 30 years ago, 28 years ago? Yeah, okay, she's right back there. We drove up here a couple of times, and we found this community that had these weird street names, and it was an upscale community, and we thought, man, someday it would be great to move there, but only wealthy people live there. We'll never be able to live there, and because that's just not us. And sure enough, about 5 years ago, we lived about 8 miles away in North Phoenix, and in a tract home. I grew up in tract homes all my life. We're living in a tract home, and we would take a drive up here with our kids. We had 3 small kids. We come up here, we go to the playground. The playground used to be right in this area over near where the splash pad is now, and we'd bring them up here, and one day we saw an open house. Okay, well, we went into this house, and I thought, my wife, who grew up with sidewalks under her feet. Grew up in Chicago, and had never really been, into the desert, anything, outside of our little track home community. I thought, okay, well, we'll walk through, we'll take a look. We're not really looking for a house. And it always happens that way. When you're never looking is when you end up finding it. And so we walked through this house. Well, the house was built in 1959. Okay, well, we're used to, something that's a little bit newer, and it was a small home, to us. We were living in a track home, 2,900 square foot house in a cul-de-sac, small lot. Houses were on top of each other, cookie cutter, but it was a bigger home. This home was about 2,000 square feet on an acre and a half, and there was wildlife. And so we walked through this house, and my wife, right away, we walked in, she said, "Let's do this." I said, "Do what?" And she said, let's buy this house. And I said, okay, well, the market is such that, things are kind of upside down right now. I don't know how we're going to do it. We'll dip into our retirement. We'll make it work. We'll do it. So we did it. So we bought the house, okay? We ended up buying the house. We're moving into the house, and this guy pulls up in an old pickup truck. He walks up to us, and he says, "I rehabbed that house about 5 years ago. I've been waiting to see who was going to buy it. There's a story behind it. I want to tell you about the house." So, okay, it was a guy, he owned the house, 2 owners before us. His name was Phil, and a really nice guy. And he comes in and he starts telling us his story. He said, I rehabbed all this stuff, I did all this stuff, but the bones are still good. The bones are still good. That's what he said. He said, next time you're at town hall, I'd never been to town hall, I didn't even know we had a town hall here. And so he said, next time you're at town hall, over by the Sundial, walk in, there's a big picture on the wall, big black and white. Look at that picture, call me after you look at that picture. Okay, you know where I'm going with this. So it was a weekend. We were walking our dogs. I peer in to that window, and I see this picture on the wall, black and white, big poster size, and there's this sundial. It's black and white. It says 1959 town of Carefree, Arizona. And there is nothing. It's all dirt roads. There's a thing that says Scottsdale Road, and it's all dirt roads. There is nothing out here. And then there's a little house with an arrow pointing to it, and it says, first house built in Carefree, 1959, by, and I saw the spelling, Gerry Jones. I thought, oh my God, the owner of the Cowboys built our house. And so I called Phil right away, and I said, Phil, the owner of the Cowboys built our house. He said, no, this guy, his name is Gerry Jones. He built your house. He lives on Black Mountain, and you live in the first house built in Carefree. And I thought, oh my gosh, wow, that is incredible. And I said, is there something I could stick on the house that'll add value to it? He said, no, the bones are good. That's all you got to know is the bones are good. So, Mr. Jones, the bones are good. And so anyway, so I get involved with a home tour with the Cave Creek Museum about 1.5 years ago, and I met Leslie walking her dogs around town, and Al, but I never met Gerry Jones. And so Leslie, really nice lady, very approachable, and I said, I got to have you guys over. I want you to tell me about the house. And so we set something up. And she said, Gerry never does anything before 4 p.m. So I thought, wow, must be nice. Okay, he doesn't leave the house before 4. Anyway, so the Cave Creek Museum contacts me, good friend of mine who is now a good friend of mine named Suzanne Johnson, and says, Mr. Gerry Jones would like to meet you because your home is one of 6 that he handpicked to be part of this tour. I thought, okay, cool. So meet Gerry Jones, and he comes in, tells us the story of Old Brownie and Brown's Ranch and how this was all sheep territory, and it was just he did the original site plan of the house. It was just an amazing transformation. People used to call him Moses. He would walk around. I know I'm speeding through a lot of things, but he'd walk around with a stick pounding the ground, and the tractors behind him, and all the snakes would come out, and he'd get rid of the snakes and just leveled the land and built all these homes and did amazing things here. So we do the home tour. I joined the board. I become president of the board. It's been a great experience, and we wanted to find a way. Fast forward, we wanted to find a way to honor Gerry Jones. So I talked to our town folks, our town administrator, Gary Neese, who is probably the longest serving, longest tenured, currently active employee in this area. And so he knows a lot of history here. So I said, Gerry, what can we do? Can we erect a statue for Mr. Jones? Thank you. Thank you very much. Don't want to break that. Can we erect a statue in town for Mr. Jones? Can we name a street after him? What can we do? And he said, just go up there, don't tip your hand, just listen to what he has to say. So Mr. and Mrs. Jones invited myself and my family up to their house in the north slope of Black Mountain. And you talk about intimidating. You know, we went up to this house up on Black Mountain. He's got the U.S. Marine Corps flag flying up there and looking out over everything. And so I sit down in his living room, overlooking all of the north side of the desert foothills. And he said to me, I don't know if you remember this, Gerry, but he said to me, what would you like to do? That's what he said. What would you like to do? So I said, look, we want to put a statue up in town. We want to name a street after you. We want to do all these things. And he sat there for a minute and he listened. I tipped my hand early and he said, I don't want a statue. It's going to be a pain in the butt to name a street after me because then you have to tell all the residents that I don't want to put anybody out. He slid this piece of paper over to me and it had a picture on it, and the picture was of a stone. And Mr. Jones decided that it was representative of his career to have a stone. And it's fitting because this is what he did. He never disrupted lands. He just built around them. And didn't have to destroy things. There's a brochure back there that talks about must we destroy in order to build, and that was his mantra his whole career, and you can do that. So we found a fitting way to honor this man for all of his contributions. He's a very humble man, even though he's lived a life that 50 of us, 100 of us will never live. And with that, I'm eternally grateful to have a friend like Gerry Jones and Leslie Jones, and thank you for bringing us all here together and creating a lifestyle here for the town of Carefree. Mr. Gerry Jones. So we have a proclamation here in town that Mayor Peterson signed that I helped to create and sponsor, and I'm going to read this to you, and then we're going to turn the mic over to Gerry. Whereas the town of Carefree is a community which acknowledges that the history and contributions of Gerry Jones as a pioneer and visionary in the early development of the town of Carefree, and whereas the town of Carefree is a community which encourages its citizens to maximize their personal involvement and participation in the community by giving of themselves wholeheartedly and with total effort, commitment, and conviction to their family, friends, and community, and whereas the town of Carefree is a community which chooses to shine a light on and celebrate individuals like Gerry Jones within its community, who was the early pioneer and laid the early land development planning, built the first home in 1959, as well as over 300 more homes over the course of his 68-year career, and he's still working, with their unique architectural designs that celebrate the beauty of the Sonoran Desert and made the Carefree lifestyle one in which is in harmony with the beautiful outdoors, working hard to preserve our desert by not disturbing the environment over moving earth in order to accommodate conventional construction. Whereas the town of Carefree acknowledges Gerry Jones and is proud to support Gerry Jones Day, commemorating the date of the dedication of the Gerry Jones Sundial Plaza, and now, therefore, I, Vince DeLisio, on behalf of Les Peterson, Mayor of the town of Carefree, and on behalf of all residents of Carefree, do hereby proclaim March 6, 2021 to be Gerry Jones Day, with all of the honors and incentives which this proclamation incurs in honor of all of his contributions to the Carefree community, from his arrival with real estate developers K.T. Palmer and Tom Darlington on a handshake agreement to this desert oasis in 1952, to his influence as a master builder, architect, and developer still today. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the town of Carefree to be affixed at Carefree Town Hall this second day of March in the year of our Lord 2021. Mr. Gerry Jones. Now you accept the award. Yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it very much. Thank you. I never expected anything like this at this late date in my career. When I first came out here, I was just fresh from the Marine Corps. Vince said I'd been in the Korean War, which was true, but I'd also spent 4 years in the Second World War in the Marine Corps too. So I put my time in, and when it was all over, I came here. I always think when I think of Carefree and what was happening here in the beginning, I used to come up here every weekend and climb rock piles. I was a rock climber, and I climbed all the rock piles up on Black Mountain and the ones down by the hotel down there and so forth, and had a lot of fun doing it. And during the first few years when I was here, I had met KT and Tom, and they had told me that they were thinking about beginning a small town up here because they had been totally dissatisfied with what Scottsdale had done with their community down there. They didn't like with the results of it, and they were going to start over and build a new town. So you want me to? You have any questions? Or?
Oh yeah. So okay. So what did you envision when you saw this land and over time? Did this become what you thought it would become? Were you thinking another? I know you didn't like the names of the streets. That was one thing. So if you'd have had your way, we'd have had Elm Street and Oak Street and yeah. Anyway, but
yes, I was a little fussy about the street names, but KT took me aside one day and he said, "Gerry, I know you're really upset about these street names, but let me tell you why we did this." He said, as a result of these street names that we have here, these odd and unusual street names for a small town, he said, we are going to gather and utilize thousands upon thousands of dollars of reports on Carefree, travel reports and so forth on this area. And it was absolutely true. When we started Carefree here and all these names, the first thing that brought fame to Carefree was these silly street names. And people came from all over the United States, even from Europe, to write articles about Carefree and its weird and unusual street names. So KT had it right like he almost always did.
why the sundial? What does that have to do with the area?
KT had the idea of putting a sundial up, and he talked to Joe Bing Wong, who was an architect in Scottsdale, and between Joe Bing Wong and some other people from around here, they designed the sundial and put it up, and KT named this. He said, "This is where the sun marks time." That was what he called this, and I thought it was a good idea to utilize that understanding of what this was, where the sun marks time. And KT always, in all of our early advertisements and so forth, he always used that terminology for the sundial.
What do you think is what was your greatest success story project that you were most proudest of? There's so many. All of them?
Yeah, well, I had a lot of very good projects, and primarily I was fortunate to have very, very, really good clients. I had a lot of excellent clients that wanted to do homes in the manner in which I liked them. I didn't like to see the earth torn up and a bulldozer come in and knock all the big boulders over and push them down the mountain and let them roll, so forth. I felt that the nature had been put things there the way it wanted it, and when I designed a home, I tried to move nothing. I tried to move absolutely nothing. Once in a while, I was in a position where I didn't have any choice but to move one or two small things. But if I had my own druthers, why, I never moved any rocks. I never moved any trees, nothing of that kind. And I found that as the years went by, that a building that you had designed and built was always better with the least amount of movement and so forth that you as an individual applied to it. And as the years went by and I spent more and more time in architecture and more times in construction and so forth, I came to truly believe that and felt that that is the absolute key to superb architecture is go in, look the lot over, build around nature. Don't move it. That was my thought process then, and it's still my process now with every house I design and build.
You have, and speaking of, there's one house that we refer to as the Bridge House, the Slingman House on Stagecoach, and there were architects that refused to build on that lot, and you went in and you did. How? Why?
Yeah, Slingman's lot was unusual. It was totally covered with large boulders, and a good many architects had come out here with potential clients and talk to the clients about what could they do to design a home on this land and make it look like something and make it truly interesting and so forth. And every one of them that came out and looked at it, what they came up with is they said, it's going to cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars to move these rocks.
And this was, what, 1969, 70?
Yes, what's
That's a lot of money.
71, I think, yeah.
Okay.
And so anyway, make a long story short, the owner, Slingman, Ross Slingman, he had heard about some of my work and he looked at some of it and then he looked me up and he asked me if I would go with him to his lot. He hadn't purchased the lot yet because he was afraid that from what the other architects had said, that it was going to cost a real arm and a leg to prepare this piece of land to put a house on it. And so we talked. He was fairly agile and he could follow me around over the rock piles and so forth. And we went over the entire 3.5-acre lot from top to bottom. And I explained to him as we went that if I left all these boulders exactly where they are, I pointed out various things that would settle in his mind. And I said, you see that big dip right down there? I said, that's a natural dip, and we're going to put the swimming pool in that dip. We won't move anything. We'll just put the swimming pool, the gunite aspect of the swimming pool, right in that dip. So we won't have to move any earth. We won't have to bulldoze anything. We won't have to jackhammer anything. It'll all be totally natural. But Ross said, yes, but how are you going to support the house? And I said, well, the house, I will do that by running concrete beams from over there, span across this very wide void here, and land on rocks over there. And 2 of those large beams will support this house. There won't be any other support. There will be nothing added. There will be nothing subtracted. So I said, we'll put those in place and we'll build the house on those 2 concrete beams that span across the wash. And then, well, what about running the water off? There's a lot of water comes down from the mountain above and sweeps right under this house and goes out across the street and down on property on the other side. And I said, well, that's the way it's been running for thousands, perhaps millions of years. So why change it? It was successful when it was running down the mountain, and it'll be successful when we let it run down the mountain. So that's what we did. We built the entire house without moving a thing. I never moved a rock, not one rock. And in the end, by utilizing the rocks that were there for supports and so forth, utilizing the dip that was there for the location of the swimming pool and all that, we didn't add anything to that property and we didn't subtract anything from it. And when it was all finished, why, it looked beautiful, it looked perfectly natural, untouched by the human hand, and there it was for all to see. It's still there today.
As in all of the homes that you've built. Last question that I have is, speaking of rocks, this rock. Now, when you and I and Leslie walked this area looking for a place and measuring, and when we finally settled on this area here, I was thinking it was going to be something out of, similar to what you find at Yosemite that you would climb. I mean, just a big, massive thing. Why this, and how did you find this on your property?
Well, I've got a lot of rocks on my property, so it's not hard to find a rock. Just throw a stone, and whatever it hits, that's a rock. So anyway, I was looking for a rock. I didn't want it to be ostentatious. I didn't want a great monstrous rock that rose up in the air 30, 40, 50 feet. I wanted some simple.
It would have been okay, though, if you'd have selected something like that. Yeah, I think you deserved it, so.
Well, I'm not sure that I would have ever put one like that in there, but anyway, this rock seemed to me appropriate for what we were trying to do. Human size, you understand it. It was in the ground on my property about 6 or 8 inches. The rest of it was visible up above the ground. And I liked the fact that the bronze plaque there was going to be in contrast with that light beigey front, the face of the boulder. And then as you come around to the ends of the boulder, the sides that were visible to the sun and so forth, why, we had those lovely tones of the natural desert, both the ends and the back side. And then on the front side, we had that excellent contrast from the bronze plaque itself and the face of the rock itself. So that was my thought process on putting that in there like that.
Well, thank you again for allowing us to celebrate you and all of your contributions. And none of us would be standing here today if not for you. And I know that you're very humble about it, but thank you again, Gerry. Leslie, thank you so much, and we appreciate you. And folks, thanks for coming out today for Gerry Jones Day in the Gerry Jones Sundial Plaza.
Great morning. Had Gerry and Leslie with us, and as I was hearing the Vince speak, one of the legacies is, of course, the 300 homes that Gerry has designed and built. But the other legacy is the philosophy of how things should be done, right? How to incorporate the desert, and how to just to make the desert makes the project even better. So we're just so fortunate to have the Gerry to have spent the past so many decades with us, and to have left so many great homes for us to enjoy going forward. But behind every great man, there's a great woman. And this morning we're very fortunate to have Leslie with us. So Leslie, on behalf of the town and all that both of you have done for us, we'd like to present you with some flowers.
Love that. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Oh
Thank you.
my goodness. Oh, beautiful.
Thank you, Vince.
Thank you all once again for coming out today, and feel free, take pictures and enjoy, and hopefully you'll come back many times over and enjoy our beautiful desert gardens. Thank you again.